We're coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. with Managing Director of Government Affairs for American Farm Bureau, Ryan Yates, on this edition of Farm to Frankfort. Well, Ericka, we're kind of like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Obviously, we're not in Frankfort anymore.
Right.
But we are here in Washington, D.C. Lots going on. Tell us a little bit about what's happening and what we're doing here today.
Well, we're definitely not in the bluegrass state anymore. We're here in D.C. with our annual congressional tour, and we're really excited this morning to have our friend Ryan Yates from American Farm Bureau with us. Ryan, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to American Farm Bureau and kind of what your role is there?
Appreciate that, Ericka. It's always dangerous asking a lobbyist to talk about themselves, but you asked for it, so
we'll get the shepherd hook if we have to.
No, glad to be here. And again, it's great to be here with you all this morning. I always love when Kentucky comes to town because you come in force. So it's a good group you guys have in today. I've been in town for just over 20 years. I grew up in Central California and studied agricultural business at Cal Poly and economics before my wife and I became recovering Californians and moved here to Washington, D.C. I've spent my career working on Capitol Hill and in the advocacy role, lobbying on behalf of rural communities across the country. So I've been with Farm Bureau for a little over 11 years, and I manage our government affairs team. So we've got a team there's 9 of us total that do the lobbying work and the regulatory work on behalf of Farm Bureau members nationwide.
Appreciate what you do and American Farm Bureau does for the states. I think it's so important that we come together as states and we have a voice here in Washington, D.C., and American Farm Bureau fills that role for all the states. And what y'all do helps us as we set policies, bring them here, and then implement them, and as you do here in Washington, D.C. It's so important, and we appreciate you and your team of what you do.
Yeah, it's an important role, and it's something we take seriously. And I will tell you all, it's nice to be the big kid at the table. Farm Bureau, we have a big voice, not only at the county level, at state capitol level, but certainly in Washington. And when Farm Bureau shows up, talks to legislators, talks to our executive branch, they listen. They want to know. They care about the issues that are affecting farm and ranch families across the country. And so it is nice to have the federation that we have that can bring that advocacy to this town, because it's certainly needed.
And speaking about that voice was heard loud and clear back in December. And it was certainly needed in order to get the CR passed and to make sure that we had enough assistance for farmers across the country included in that package. So there's roughly $31 billion included in disaster and economic assistance for farmers. Where are we at as far as getting those payments out the door? We know there was a 90-day mandate to get those payments out. What's the timeline for that right now?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to meet with Secretary Rollins last week. President Duvall and I and a couple of our colleagues went over, and we had a good conversation with the new secretary. It was a delightful meeting with her. She is bringing a passion to her job that is certainly very much welcomed in this town. That was the first question that we had for the secretary, and her answer was, we will be getting the payments out on time. The CR provided the USDA a 90-day window to get those dollars out the door, and from what I'm hearing from USDA, they are on track to do that.
I know that's encouraging, not just for our members here, but for everybody across the country. Now, that CR also continued government funding up until March 14th. That deadline's quickly approaching. What are we hearing about a new CR? Is it going to be a clean CR? Are we going to have additional programs in it? What's that going to look like?
Well, there's very few things that motivate Congress like a deadline, but they love to give themselves deadlines, and they get to work and put out lots of press releases. So managing the government by CR is not the best way to govern, but that's sort of what we're at this point in time. Last year, when we had a split government, right, between the Biden administration and a Republican Congress with very tight margins, it was challenging to get anything done. And when I mentioned that Farm Bureau has a strong voice. I look at that CR that was able to pass in a split government. It was a clean CR except for agriculture. Our voice was loud, it was heard, and while we wanted a little bit more, $30 billion to help our rural communities that are suffering from one of the worst economic downturns in recent history, is a positive thing. So again, Congress set themselves another deadline for funding the federal government, and they will react and they will get it done. So, like I said, it's not the best way to do business, but that was the situation we had. Now, moving forward, we're hopeful that this new Congress will be able to get together, get their appropriations bills done on time this year. I know the appropriations committees are taking their jobs very seriously. We have a new majority in the Senate, and again, we're hopeful that perhaps they can do business a little bit differently, provide some long-term certainty, and get the fiscal 26 package done.
I know when they were negotiating that CR, all the resolutions committee was here in town, and y'all were trying to work resolutions and work the CR, and it was a pretty hectic week for all of y'all. But I know for a fact that y'all were in the room and in negotiations, and President Duval and Sam and the whole team was there working hard, and we do appreciate y'all being there for that. It was important for agriculture to get that done in the times we're in right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's an absolute big deal. And like I said, I can't underscore enough how effective this organization is because we show up each and every day. You guys show up, you do the work, you're advocating at home, you're advocating in this town, and with that strong voice that we have, we really can move mountains. So there's no shortage of problems in this town that need to be overcome, but I'm very confident in the work because of the grassroots network that we have, because of you all, we're able to be successful in this town.
And we know government funding is not the only thing that Congress has to worry about right now. A lot of people have been hearing about budget reconciliation. The House and Senate have different plans for what that will look like. For those that don't work in government or aren't as familiar with it, can you tell them what reconciliation is and what that process is like?
Yeah, it's a wonky, funny thing, budget reconciliation. So it is an opportunity that Congress has it's a limited legislative opportunity to engage in moving forward a bill that can address funding, it can address revenue, it can address debt issues, so it's limited in scope. Congress tends to use this. I think they've used it since the Budget Act. They've used it 22 times, so it's something that isn't done annually. Right. Typically, it will happen when you have a government trifecta, so you'll have Republican or Democrat control in both chambers as well as the White House. And so what will have to happen, and we saw last week the Senate moving their budget bill. The House and Senate will pass a budget bill, and that bill is going to provide instructions to congressional committees that will address specific funding issues. They can address revenue by savings, they can address tax issues, and they can address the debt. And so they'll use this mechanism, and I would imagine in this reconciliation package, they will use this to address a number of President Trump's priorities specific to spending and spending cuts, as well as other opportunities such as tax reform. The last time we saw a tax measure move through Tax Cuts and Jobs Act back in 2017, they used the budget reconciliation process then, and we anticipate that the budget reconciliation process this year will address those expiring tax provisions in TCJA. So in terms of top priorities for Farm Bureau, tax code is key, and so we will be actively working with Congress. We've had continued meetings weekly almost with the leadership team. Had a meeting with them last week talking about the tax code and reconciliation and how we're going to get some key provisions reauthorized this year that are critical to farm and ranch families.
And we know the House and Senate don't always see eye to eye when it comes on just how they get things done. So the House wants to do one big beautiful bill. That's the phrase that we keep hearing is one big beautiful reconciliation bill. The Senate wants to take a different approach. Yeah. Could you tell everybody kind of what the House is looking at versus Senate and how that might play out?
Well, one of the things that comes with a new gentleman in the White House is a new vernacular. So President Trump talked about his desire for one big beautiful bill. Again, the House and Senate, they have they have different limitations. They have different majorities currently, and that provides a level of comfort that is going to vary from one chamber to the next. When you have a bigger majority, you're able to have a little bit more flexibility. So I think in terms of the Senate, they feel a little bit more comfortable. And I didn't mention in a budget reconciliation package, the Senate doesn't have to worry about a filibuster, so they need a simple majority. And so they feel pretty comfortable that they can have some flexibility to move forward 2 bills. The House, I think because of the very tight margins that they have in the House of Representatives, they're going to need a little bit of a stronger angle. And moving forward 1 bill, they feel that they will have more certainty to be able to win over the majority in the lower chamber. But again, the Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune, they know their members, they know that what their delegations look like, and they're going to be able to manage this differently. At the end of the day, somebody is going to have to give, and that's the big question now: is are we going to have 1 big beautiful bill, or are we going to get this done in 2? So time will tell. I'm not putting a whole lot of stress on it. Congress always finds a way to get it done. So this is a lot of posturing, and we'll see ultimately how this thing plays out. But I guarantee you, both Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson are committed. They have a number of top priorities that they've heard from the American people through the election last year, and certainly President Trump has a number of top priorities that he needs the Congress to address. So they will find a way to get it done, and in the meantime, we will be working diligently with our House and Senate delegations to ensure that farm and ranch priorities are protected and upheld in any sort of budget reconciliation package.
And you talked about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That was my first experience as a young Senate staffer going through a vote-a-rama. It was not fun. I do not recommend vote-a-ramas. But that bill had a number of provisions in it that were important, not just to everyday Americans, but specifically to the agriculture community. And we know that those are expiring this year. Can you talk about some of those key provisions, and then also what will be American Farm Bureau's priorities for a new tax package?
Yeah, so I mean, you've got most farm and ranch businesses. These are small businesses. These are pass-through businesses. So provisions like 199A are critically important, making sure that the tax rates are down. The estate tax will continue to be a top priority for us, and so again, we would prefer to not have an estate tax at all, but the exemptions that were provided in TCJA, we want to get those levels at a place where farm and ranch families that are thinking forward to the next generation, they're not going to have to worry about that next generation farmer and rancher having to pay the federal government and potentially lose the farm just to try to stay afloat. So the estate tax or death tax, however we want to spin it, will continue to be a top priority, and so I think we've got some opportunities to build upon the TCJA, and again, hopefully, when we talk to our members and when our members are talking to Congress, this is not a great time. The ag economy is in a bad place. The world looks a whole lot different, not only on the tax front. In 2017, the world looked a whole lot differently. We passed a farm bill in 2018. The world looked a whole lot differently. So again, as we engage Congress, both on tax reform as well as a farm bill, we need to make sure both of these tools meet the needs of farmers today.
100%. And we know Congress doesn't just have to worry about funding or dealing with reconciliation. The Senate also has a fun little job of confirming the presidential appointments. Yep. Can you tell us a little about some that we can get excited about? We do have a new Secretary of Agriculture who is fantastic and came to Kentucky as her first official state visit. We were excited to welcome her. Can you tell us about some other important nominations that we can look forward to?
Yeah, Stephen Vaden is probably the next up that we'll be looking at. Brooke Rollins was confirmed. She saw unanimous support in the Ag Committee, which is no small deal. She's going to be bringing a lot of enthusiasm to the USDA, and she certainly has no shortage of things on her to-do list. So we're eager to see her get to work. But she's got to staff up, and so the federal government has thousands of political appointees that need to be filled. So again, they usually start at the top. The president's going to build out his cabinet, and we've been seeing the Senate calendar full of confirmations. So the Senate authorizing committees, they will be moving through those confirmations, and then ultimately they're voted on the floor. We've got nominees like Ms. Rollins that are largely bipartisan confirmations. We've had others that the president's picks are more narrowly making their way through Senate confirmation. But it does take time on the Senate calendar, and we're hopeful that the speed at which the Senate confirms these individuals, gets them over the agencies to get their job done. Right now, we're on record pace. I will tell you, I've been through many administrations in this town. They're working at record pace, and so we're hoping that they can get the job done. And certainly, we've got a number of empty positions over at USDA. All of the undersecretary positions need to be filled. Certainly, the DepSec needs to be filled. Stephen Vaden, I think, will do a great job. I think you all know him well during his first term in 45, but we're eager to have him down at the Witten Building, and we'll be working in a coalition fashion. We've got a letter going up to the Senate encouraging swift confirmation. So it's a process. It does take time, but like I said, from what I'm seeing in this administration, working with their friends in the Senate, they're moving through quickly. So it's always awkward at the beginning of any new Congress, especially when you have a new administration, because you got to get your people in the right places before you can actually deliver. And so that's the awkward phase that we're in now. It feels a little weird. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of nerves. But from what I'm seeing, again, people are ready to get to work.
And it's always encouraging to see those posts get filled so they can get back to the work of the people.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, are there any parting thoughts you'd like to leave with our members?
Yeah, I mean, again, I will be very clear. The work that you do, not only on your farms, feeding America is critically important. Members of Congress, they know Farm Bureau. They know that when we come to the table, be it in Frankfort or Washington, the issues that we bring are, and working with our government affairs teams, these aren't just ideas that Ericka or myself or my team are coming up with. Every issue that we bring before Congress, we bring before the administration. It started at a family farm. It started at a county farm bureau, and we're able to really bring the truth to Washington, and they listen. Like I said, we are the largest general farm organization in the country, if not the world, and that power is incredibly useful when we are engaging with challenging politicians in this town. I will tell you, most members of Congress don't come from rural America. Many of them have farmed or come from farm families, but that is certainly the minority. And so even if you have a member of Congress that said all the right things on the campaign trail, or perhaps they're an incumbent that has delivered year after year, it doesn't mean that you should get comfortable. You need to do your work. You have to talk to them. You have to elevate that voice, and using the grassroots that we have at Farm Bureau, we're able to do that. But again, it's a squeaky wheel kind of thing. So we need to be diligent in the work that we do to bring that message to Congress, and certainly there are no shortage of issues that you all are facing that we need Congress to step up and deliver. So it's an exciting time. Glad that you are here in Washington. As I tell everybody that comes to town, if you are not here telling your story, someone else is. And so again, love it when Kentucky's in town. You guys bring a good group, and to be perfectly fair, you have a great delegation at home. So we appreciate you electing the right people to serve in the United States Congress. So very much appreciate being here, and happy to answer any questions if we have time.
Thanks so much, Ryan. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to getting some questions.